From this day henceforth, the words cis and cisgender will be considered slurs on Twitter. So says the God Emperor of Mars, Elon Musk himself, in what has got to be a rather historic terms of service update. Unofficial, albeit, at the moment, as this is, obviously, a TOS update that affects near exclusively one side of the political divide. And for the first time in living memory, we're not the target. I'm sure this has happened before in the lengthy span of human history, but I can't remember an instance. We might need to go back to the time of the thunder lizard to find an equivalence, in fact, but here we are. Okay, right, I am exaggerating somewhat, of course, as I'm sure this has happened before, just not in the last 20 or 30 odd years, but this is, of course, a major turning point in what we may refer to as the culture wars, as up until this point, terms of service updates that target one side exclusively, they were quite common, but it was always against our side of the fence. Rather famously, the best example of this would of course be previous Twitter, as Timothy of the Pool so beautifully pointed out in his interview with, well, Twitter's lawyer, practically, on the Joe Rogan show. Misgendering was a bannable offense on Twitter, but misgendering, of course, is something that only one side cares about, and in this case, it's the exact same thing. There is a partisan divide over a term that for one group is actually genuinely used as a cudgel. The terms cis and cisgender are used in a derogatory manner by the left, whereas the right, no right-leaning heterosexual man would ever refer to himself as cisgender, particularly considering the inventor of the term. But let's talk about this a little bit more seriously, shall we? Because I both agree and disagree with this. On the one hand, I agree in that, well, it is a slur being used by one side, and when the left uses it, it is intended as a slur. It is not a neutral term, it is not a nice term, it is not something meant to give an accurate portrayal of the person in question. It is used to mean you are not part of us, you are not a part of the collective, you are not a part of the club, and thus it is okay to attack you, to savage you, and do practically anything whatsoever to you. In fact, this whole thing started in response to a person being, well, bullied over this. And then is also a little bit of a qualified add in here, that this appears to be in response to, well, targeted and long-term harassment rather than merely just the usage of the word in and of itself. And that leads us back to, of course, what is a slur? What is an insult? Well, it is a word or a term that we as a society have imbued with negative consequences, or connections more correctly. Negative connotations, I believe, is the correct terminology. Faggot, for example. That's a dangerous word to use on YouTube these days, but it used to mean bundle of sticks, as the joke goes. Gay used to mean something fun and positive, so you've got two examples of this going kind of the reverse ways. I'm reading a book right now, for example, on the Russo-Japanese War that frequently refers to parties as gay, in that they were colourful and festive experiences because, of course, language changes. And in the case of this language, well, cis and cisgender today are used as insults, straight up, by one side of the political divide, which has, of course, weaponized language for years and years now. They've either they will make up their own terms, as is the case of cis or cisgender, and then attribute negative attributes to that and then use it, or they will use terms that we already have significant negative connotations with as weapons to beat other people over the head with. Fascist today, for example, is not used to refer to the political leaning of fascist or national socialist. It is used as a bad man bad, rather than referring to anything with historical context. But on the other hand, this also now means that we are paying the left back by their own coin, which don't get me wrong, I am all for, at least for a period of time. You cannot accuse me of hypocrisy. I've been the victim of it for the last few decades. I am more than happy to, as I've said over the years, you need to give them a taste of their own medicine for them to look at it and realize, yeah, I don't like when this happens to me. Maybe I should reconsider using it myself as a tool. That seems to be the only way they will ever learn. As, well, the debate has been going now again for years and years, trying to go like, okay, but seriously, if you keep doing this, there are negative consequences and they can be turned back on you. And they simply respond, "Me ne frego." Like the traditional leftists that they are indeed. Ironically, that fits so well. But it is still, well, it is using the tool of the left to defeat the left. It is yet another, a form of censorship, straight up. It is going like, okay, well, we've noticed that this group uses this term, and therefore we are going to target this term for exclusion and for, well, persecution. And I'm not a fan of that in theory, in practice. And it is, of course, again, simply the same argument the other way around. If we don't stop it now, will it be used against us later? Well, in this case, honestly, genuinely, I suspect this is more of a cultural phenomenon rather than anything that will have long-term consequences. This, I believe, is a response of repeated and severe authoritarian overreach on behalf of the side, now finally, for the first time in literally decades, getting a slap back of their own. Despite, of course, again, the incredibly inherently negative connotations of the person who invented the word. The problem with leftism is that a lot of their terms are based on, well, stuff like this. So, I am not actually in opposition to this in the short term. So, because half of me thinks like, okay, this is a meme, clearly. And it is. And it also refers to a very specific instance here of repeated targeted harassment. So you've got context. Okay. Are the words cis or cisgender considered just blanket slurs? That is the definition that needs to be made. Will somebody using it in its more scientific term, let's be extremely generous here, and granted the possibility of a sexologist conversation using this term to refer to specifically a sexual orientation rather than using straight or heterosexual for reasons unbeknownst, will they then be struck technically with a terms of service violation for, well, using slurs, using our version of hate speech, sort of, kind of, in a way? Or will it simply be used as one of a long list of context things? Because, well, as they, using cuck, for example, a lovely word with great oomph in it, repeatedly against someone from a group of people that all belong to the right wing of politics, would that be considered a slur in general, or would it be considered a slur in reference to repeated targeted harassment? Because there is a very valuable distinction to be made there, because yes, when the left is using cis or cisgender against this person, it is very clearly an attempt to harass and abuse that person, no question about it. But if a group of right-wingers were using the word cuck in the same way, that too could be considered a way of repeating and targeting harassment of an individual along political lines. If we can arrive at the point where the judgment as to whether or not anything is a slur will be based on that level of sophistication, then we will have taken a massive step forward in content moderation, because of course that is one of those big-ass problems of content moderation. If you simply take a word that is offensive and then you apply it to every context, you will miss out on both cases of actual, but in English, where ill harm was intended, and you will miss out on that, and you will apply it to cases where people are merely bantering, for example. Ye old N-word is a beautiful example of this, yet again. Oh god, the N-word. The N-word is a social phenomenon of remarkable potency, where we have actually come up with a shortened form for it, because you are not allowed to speak it. We have imbued this word with such tremendous power and authority that uttering it on social media, well, runs the risk of getting your entire presence on that channel yeeted. And yet, at the same time, it is repeated in the lyrics of popular songs constantly ad infinitum. It's the beautiful duality of it. Because, of course, we as a society have attributed context to the words. When it is spoken by a black person in the form of a rap lyric, it's entirely okay. When it's said on TV shows from black people talking to black people, it's okay. You drop it from a white mouth, however, and that's grounds for instant Yito Delito El Cheeto. And in a way, this too is understandable. You know, again, it is, what is a slur? It's something that we have attributed negative connotations to. And if we can arrive at a point where the actual moderation of social media platforms goes along those precise lines, well, it's not the worst thing ever. At least we all know the rules, stupid and hypocritical though they in many cases might be. I mean, I have forwarded the argument several times that the N-word should be viewed as an achievement on behalf of African Americans, rather than a slur these days, but details. Yet we do also genuinely need to be wary of using the tactics of the enemy and getting comfortable with them. We can only justify that, well, they did it for so long. And don't get me wrong, again, it is an honest-to-God justification. There is simply no question about it. After a dog has been kicked for long enough, well, you expect the bastard to bite, don't you? The pendulum swing will be a delicious thing for quite some time, and I will be enjoying it. Nevertheless, though, it's... Oh, the swing. I might be the only one worried about it. I might be worried for no reason. I hope I am worried for absolutely no reason, but again, this is absolutely, unquestionably, no doubt about it, a terms of service update that targeted one side and one side only. Because you will never see right-wingers using cisgender as an insult. Like, it will literally not occur to them. I remember there was a clip a little while ago that it was a person that received a lot of messages. He was on the left wing of things, and he was being called cuck, etc. Like, does your girlfriend, wife's bull? I think it was. I'm paraphrasing here. Does he help you out around the house? Does he fix things up? And the dude responded seriously and goes like, yeah, I have a very good relationship with my bull. Thank you very much. It's like we have arrived at the point where the two sides are so far apart they cannot recognize when they are insulting one another anymore. Like, our vocabulary has deviated to the point where we are no longer able to fully recognize insults for what they are. It's ridiculous, it's genuinely absurd, and yet that is exactly where we are now, which is why we are actually unironically going to require content moderation like this, because as much as I hate the idea and I would love absolute free speech, we do have a legal system which does in fact forbid a lot of this, and for Twitter to be able to operate in certain countries, you do need content moderation, and in cases like this, well, this is simply a way to make the content moderation fair. Okay, you will not allow the opposition party to use their politically charged words to go after you. Well, I'm going to implement the exact same rules in your direction as well. So long as this is executed reasonably and fairly, as long as it is executed levelly, I see only benefits from this. Even as I also am cognizant of the potential dangers of it as well, long term. But for now, applause, Elon Musk. Yet another win in your column, dear sir. Until next time, I've been Arch, thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.